before and then just committed the same day. So he fell in love with the things that make Chapel Hill what it is, and of course what Carolina basketball is. Well, they both said the same thing. It's the family atmosphere. But we also know we're going to win and compete for a national championship. And these are two really important players. It kind of helps Carolina's roster moving forward. You got your starting point guard. You got your potential starting point guard after Cole Anthony leaves and Seventh Woods graduates. Right. But also a guy that can play off the ball, which you're going to need because you have a bunch of wing players that are outside of Brandon Robinson unproven. And Andrew Platek and Leaky Black. Right. So a pretty big day yesterday for Carolina basketball recruiting. If Carolina football has been killing it, and yesterday Carolina basketball kind of picked up that momentum.
Yeah, I think you're spot on with that analysis. I think that Cole Anthony, it was huge for sure. I mean, for Roy Williams to say he's the best point guard that he's ever recruited, that should tell people right there that's high praise. And to think that this guy might be more complete than Kobe White, who we saw last year. Now, that probably means on as a defender, that's where he rounds out a little bit better. But to think that we could have back-to-back freshman point guards that could be that efficient from the field and can take over games like that has to be exciting. And, Harris, I don't think people are talking enough about how big his commitment is. You mentioned it. He's a guy that will probably come in this year and play a lot of 2, and then he'll move and take over the 1 spot whenever Cole Anthony leaves. You would assume, barring, Jeremiah Francis maybe coming in and showing that he's got something, maybe then you can keep him at the 2-guard position. It just kind of depends. But picking up a guy that's that versatile for a team that is needing some significant depth for next year. And I mean, there are going to be people that are going to question that 2-guard spot. Who's going to actually slide in there? Is that going to be Brandon Robinson? Is, Leaky Black? I mean, Leaky, I don't even know where Leaky's going to. Leaky, I swear to God, Leaky will turn up on someone's depth chart or starting 5 as a center. I mean, I swear, they play him everywhere. They got people that want him at point guard. They got people that want him at the 4. He's all over the place. So, but I think ultimately he'll probably end up at the 3. So Brandon Robinson's going to be your guy. That's where Anthony Harris has to be key. You don't have to come in and be phenomenal where you got to come in and start, but you've got to come in and be serviceable off the bench.
So now we'll move on to a little bit more fun topic. And that was Carolina reeling in both grad transfers they seeked, which kind of came as a shock to me. I was confident we'd get Christian Keeling, the Charleston Southern transfer. Right. I thought Justin Pierce was a guy that was going to Notre Dame. Mm-hmm. Comes to Carolina, along with Keeling. Pretty much ends the recruiting cycle now for this class.
Yes, yeah. Precious Achua not going to be.
I would be very surprised if he commits to Carolina. I've thought all along he was a Memphis guy, and with what they're continuing to do, he's probably going to go there because they're recruiting class.
He could be a Kansas guy now though because of with Tucker going there, but
so we're going to talk about Keeling and Pierce. Keeling's a kid that I got really excited when I was finally doing some research on him. A guy that improved his scoring average every year. Mm-hmm. As a guy who was a double-digit scorer as a freshman, he still improved it as his sophomore and junior years. And that was those 2 years he was their number 1 option. So he was playing in the Colonial, but you were still getting geared up for the defenses to come after you.
He played in the Sun Belt, doesn't he? He was Georgia Southern. Was a Georgia Southern guy.
Charleston Southern.
Okay. Got my Southerns mixed up.
So you got that you like seeing that progression, but also his field goal percentage from the overall wasn't bad. He needs to be a little bit more consistent 3-point shooter. But I mean, we saw what the shooting did with Cam Johnson as he developed. Mm-hmm. Really gave a lot of faith that this guy could really pour it in from the outside. The number one thing about him that I like, and Pierce has this quality as well. There are 2 things that get me, feeling some kind of way in the game of basketball. It's a big man that runs and a guard that rebounds. Ugh. He averages over 8 rebounds a game as a guard. That's pretty impressive.
Now, okay, this is my only concern with getting overly. I don't know what to say. Don't be getting too hot and heavy in here over that stat, because is this because there are a lack of rebounders on his team at Charleston Southern, or because he really is that good of a rebounder?
I think it's the more the latter because rebounding's all about will and effort. I think the kid values how important that part of the game is. And guess what? You just joined a program that is the backbone of Carolina basketball. Mm-hmm. Everyone wants to talk about the secondary break and the point guard play and all this other stuff. Under Roy Williams, if they rebound the ball at a high level, they're going to be a team in March nobody wants to play. Mm-hmm. And so you just add a guy, you got to think, you're losing Luke Maye. That's 10 rebounds a game. Cam Johnson was giving you about 5 or 6. Mm-hmm. That's 16 rebounds. Kenny Williams, you get about 2 or 3. You pretty much lost 20 rebounds from your starting.
Kobe White gave you some rebounds as well, and your Little.
Exactly. You've lost a lot of rebounds, and you've got a guy that understands that's important, and Roy's not going to have to beg him to rebound. We had to beg Cam Johnson as a junior to rebound. Mm-hmm. I begged Kenny Williams for 4 years to go rebound the ball. With Keeling, we're not going to have to beg him. He's going to take his own butt to the backboards, and that's something that I like to see. You look at Pierce, gives you some flexibility on the perimeter. So you could still maybe see a smaller lineup at times with this kid. Mm-hmm. Really good scorer. Really, his last 2 years, really was able to score the ball at a really good clip. Can shoot it. And also average north of 8 rebounds a game. So has the ability to get on the backboards on the perimeter, which of course is something that I love. And I'm just really surprised. And Carolina football recruiting has been killing it since Mac Brown came back. In December. This 2-week stretch that Carolina basketball just had with the start of Cole Anthony, it just shows you how one player can flip a recruiting class.
Hey, man.
Because you get Anthony Harris, and then you get both of these grad transfers. It's got this roster pretty much solidified. We're not going to get in the lineup discussion right at this point because it's only May. We'll talk about it at some point over the summer. This year's going
to be taxing. Last year, at least, it was only one guy.
Yeah. We'll have that later at some point in the summer. We're just like, okay, what do we think? But the roster, 2 weeks ago, we had questions. Mm-hmm. I told you last night, or the other night when we were having a conversation, that if I had to pick a team to win the ACC, based on the roster, now that it's formed, assuming that you don't get Precious, which we're not, I would have no problem saying Carolina has the best team right now to go win the ACC because you've got the talent. You added 2 experienced players that are double-digit scorers and quality rebounders. Mm-hmm. So really a 2-week stretch that Roy Williams just killed it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, well, his whole staff. I mean, again, Hubert Davis was a guy that was influential in just about every player's recruitment. So, again, it continues to show the type of staff that Roy has put together around him. But, I mean, you look at this roster right now. We've seen a lot of people on Twitter that have been talking about it now. I mean, Keeling's probably a guy that's going to start at the 2-guard spot. More than likely. So you've got a starter there. Pierce is a guy that's going to, be in that discussion whether or not we're going to start him or not. But I mean, these are 2 guys that are scorers. They're going to put the ball in the basket. And that's the other thing that you talked about how much rebounding we lost. Look at how much scoring this team lost. So, I mean, again, you've got the 2 freshmen that are going to come in and will definitely help to offset that a little bit. And Anthony, who will, we expect to be, somewhere around where Kobe White was at. And people might say, well, is that lofty expectation? No, not for him. I mean, no offense. That's kind of what comes with the rating of being a 5-star, being the number 2 player in the country. And then Armando Bacot, that's again another guy that is more of a traditional big inside for Roy. I think that's also going to help with some of the rebounding that you were talking about. But, I mean, also you got to look at him as a guy that is going to be able to give you some inside scoring. His size will definitely help down there. But, then you have Keeling and Pierce, who have been guys that were the guy on their team. They've had that role before. You're going to have multiple guys that, if needed, can take over games offensively, something that last year we were somewhat concerned about because, Luke Maye had some of those moments in his junior year Cam Johnson really didn't have those moments in his junior year, so coming into last year, that was a concern. Kobe White was a freshman, and then outside of that, I mean, Kenny Williams was just not a guy that took over games. We knew that. Kenny Williams was a guy that was a defensive guru, would be a guy that could occasionally, hit his stride from three-point land, but really wasn't that guy offensively that everybody was writing home about. This team is going to be a lot different than that. I feel like the concerns for some people, and I want to, you've looked into these guys a little bit more than I have, definitely. But when you look at these guys, what are these guys like defensively? Are these guys that are willing defenders or maybe are proven defenders from what you've seen?
From what I've gathered from the research on Keeling's the better defender individually.
Mm-hmm.
Pierce is more of a guy that's better as a team defender, which you need that. You need a guy who individually is going to take pride in defending his man. And with Pierce, he's a guy that, in the team aspect, maybe whether it's rotations or just talking, he excels in that. They'll both be better defenders here than they were where they were, just because the coaching's going to be better. And just the added focus. Because I do think you saw this year that this team, when they played defense, and they enjoyed playing defense,
mm-hmm.
and you get rewarded by getting stops and you get points on the other end, it makes the game more fun, and most of the times you win. So they both have qualities defensively that are good, and they'll both can improve drastically on that area defensively under the tutelage of Roy Williams and the staff. So really, these were two transfers that were sought out by, Michigan wanted, Pierce. I know Keeling was in a lot of teams' a wish list as a grad transfer because of just their intangibles as basketball players,
mm-hmm.
and Carolina landed both of them, which I didn't think was expected. I don't think the staff expected it. I know I didn't expect it. I know the gauge from Twitter was we'll probably get one, not both, and then you get both. We can attest that to whether it's the Cole Anthony effect or just, hey, they got sold on Carolina basketball.
I would say Armando Bacot also
is a very big recruiter.
Yes.
And it'll just be very fun when we go to late night. It's gonna be a different late night this year, because you're not going to see out there guys we've seen for the last four years. They're gonna be new guys.
Oh yeah.
And it's just gonna be a different feel for Carolina basketball. I know Adam Lucas has talked a lot about it's kind of like you writing a chapter and starting a new book. Because you've lost so many guys that, most programs don't even get to have ever. We've had so many in a 4 to 6 year span that now it's just a new era of Carolina basketball under Roy Williams. So now we'll move on to talk about Seventh Woods, who announced he's transferring from Carolina. He announced this shortly after we landed number 2 overall recruit Cole Anthony, who plays the point guard position, and then, of course, Anthony Harris, who's a combo guard, a day after we landed Cole Anthony. And at first, this news came as a surprise. It's the first transfer we've had since Larry Drew left the program. So this hasn't happened in almost a decade in Chapel Hill. But also, more importantly, it leaves this roster going into summer ball without a point guard that's played meaningful minutes. You have Leaky Black, who played a little bit, but not enough to say, yeah, we have confidence in him running the offense. And then, of course, Cole Anthony is a freshman. We don't know how he'll adapt to the college game. We all hope it's kind of like how Kobe grew to as the season came along this past year, but you just never know. He's a different kind of player. So what were your initial thoughts when we learned the transfer announcements of national champion winner Seventh Woods?
Well, first, let's start with the Larry Drew thing because, it's the first time that someone's transferred since Larry Drew, and people wanted to compare Seventh Woods to Larry Drew. That is a joke. Seventh Woods actually wanted to be a part of Carolina. Larry Drew is literally one of the only Tar Heels that most people can say, without a doubt, they don't respect. And I share that sentiment. Larry Drew, is one of the worst players that's ever played for us. The kid sucked. Plain and simple. There's no other way. I'm not going to beat around the bush on that one. Seventh Woods at least brought something to the table last year. And, there were a lot of arguments that I got into on the day that he announced his transfer. And